I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
It's astounding.
Hello, welcome to Rudy's Movie Review, San Antonio's unofficial movie critic. And boy, this is gonna be a good video because, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in my entire life, I saw the Rocky Horror Picture Show last night. Now, I've seen segments of the film, the Time Warp video, Tim Curry's entrance as Dr. Frankenfurter. I've seen those key moments, but I've never in my life have actually sat down at home with a drink in my hand with the subtitles on and saw this film in its entirety. And I have to admit, visually it's a very powerful film with a very great message. And I guess I just wanted to talk about it with you guys. But it's funny because explaining it in a logical narrative 3-key act structure, it makes no sense. This film makes no sense whatsoever, but the fun, the spirit, and the message that the film is trying to communicate, I guess, is what I want to talk about. At least what I walked away while watching this film last night. And again, I'm writing my notes, and it's not like a traditional story where there's an arc.
Wonderfully weird.
I don't know how to talk about it. I really don't. So what I'm going to do is really just talk about bits and pieces of the film that I found very inspiring and like, oh, that's a good message that they're trying to communicate, and just break it up into segments, okay? So what I'd like to first talk about is just the opening sequence.
Michael Rennie was ill the day.
Now, for those that don't know, believe it or not, I am a fan of modern art, especially the use of negative space. Less is always more. So when the film starts, you have the lip singing science fiction double feature, and I'm just like, hey, that looks really cool. I actually love how that looks. It turns out in the script, when they first were going to film the movie, it was going to be a montage of a bunch of science fiction films from the 50s and 60s as the lyrics are speaking to. But Brian Johnson, the set director, who went on later in his career to work on Aliens and Empire Strikes Back, he had the idea of inspiration to use the lips from the painting The Observatory, The Lovers, hope I'm saying that right, as a different option to have the lips kind of lip sync the song at the beginning. And it was a great call in my opinion. It caught my eye and it really stands out. And then we get to the church, where if you look visually, the director's really trying to communicate social norms that are established and what we're supposed to be doing in our lives, what society wants us to do, but also to be happy and be yourself. And it's hidden cleverly visually, if that makes sense. Brad and Janet are at a wedding of their friends, I believe, and they're just talking, just taking photos, and the bride throws a bouquet over her shoulder, and Janet catches it. And then we have this dialogue where Brad's friend is like, hey, looks like you're the lucky one next, buddy. Let's go get married. And Brad's like, yeah, sure, I guess you're right. And there's that face that Brad makes, so you know he's uncertain that he wants to get married. Is that what he wants to do? But that's what society wants. And I kind of love that. There's a lot of like subliminal messaging in the back. You know, fear not, be just and fear not. They have that signage there, which really just means be yourself and be happy. But also there's a lot of happiness and death visuals within that sequence as well. Brad's walking while Susan Sarandon's speaking with him, and they're in a cemetery. Then you see a sign in the back that says Denton is a place of happiness, so to speak, which really is them just trying to communicate that, hey, you only live once in your life. Be happy, you know, do what you love and be who you are. It's actually communicated twice, even outside as they're talking by the cemetery, then in the church, you know, there's one thing left to do, and then they bring out a casket. It was pretty much on the nose from an audience standpoint, like, okay, I get it, what you're trying to say, I appreciate that message, and it's really just establishing the social norms. They even have the, later we find out that is Riff Raff and Magenta in the background posing as the American Gothic painting, you know, what society, the norm is expecting you to be and look like. So I do like that contrast, and this film is completely filled visually with compare and contrast, which I appreciate from a critic standpoint. From the church, we get into the car, it starts to rain, and Janet and Brad get a flat. So now they're stuck in the middle of nowhere and they have to find some shelter. So they go off and they're looking for a light in the darkness, and they find a light somewhere in the Frankenstein place. Over at the Frankenstein place. The songs are catchy. I'm sorry I can't sing. Deal with it. From that point, we're then introduced to Richard O'Brien. That's the worst impression of him, but I am trying. But I'm a big fan of him because he was also in Flash Gordon. Flash Gordon's one of my favorite films. But they get into the house, and then we have the first musical montage, which is the Time Warp.
It's just a jump to the left.
And I love really just the body language and acting of Susan Sarandon. And I forget the gentleman's name, Brad. I'm just going to call him Brad. By the way, Steve Martin auditioned for Brad and didn't get it. Did you know that? They're just subjected to, and from their perspective, from their lifestyle, a party that's totally outrageous, and they just totally feel uncomfortable. And I do like, again, the visual contrast of lifestyles. And you know what? I love that because it really speaks to society, really. I mean, there's a lot of lifestyles that people may not be comfortable with or used to. So seeing that visual uncomfortableness on Brad and Janet, I thought that was really cool. And like, again, I get it, it's on the nose, but I get it, I get the message. Don't get strung out. And then we're introduced to Tim Curry, Dr. Frankenfurt. And I have to admit, again, I've seen his entrance, but again, this is the first time I have the subtitles on and watching and listening to what he's saying. I have to admit, it's a very charismatic, powerful character. And think about it from an actor standpoint, here's your role, here are your lines. Action, for him to deliver that persona, that swag, the way he delivered his lines and just broke the fourth wall from time to time, looking at the camera. It's a very inspiring character. I admire the courage and bravery it took to do that. And I can understand the legacy and how people look up to him for that role. Quite inspiring. Maybe I should have put lipstick on for this review. That probably would have helped, right? I don't wear lipstick. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit a timeout and recap what we've gotten. We've gotten a church, two people who got a flat tire and need a phone. They go from their car to a light in the darkness over at the Frankenstein place, and they're introduced to a societal party that they just weren't expecting. And now they're introduced to the owner of the house, Dr. Frankenfurt, and now he's taking them to a laboratory to show them a man who is going to help relieve his tension. A man he created. They're going to show him that. This film makes no sense. So Rocky, this cut dude, is walking around in very, I don't know, Speedos? Gold Speedos? I don't know. Dr. Frankenfurt is just, oh God, and just kissing his feet everywhere he goes and just all over him. And then Meatloaf, who is frozen in a fridge, just crashes through the refrigerator, the deep freeze, and goes on another singing montage, and is then killed at the end of that montage by Dr. Frankenfurt. But I did like the key reference. There's a song that Tim Curry's singing about, I'll make you a man in 7 days.
Just 7 days, I can make you a man.
When I first heard it, I guess I was already down to my drink and had 2 of them already. I was thinking, did he mean like, I'll make him a man by having sex with him? But no, as he said Charles Atlas, I started putting my brain together. He's speaking to the old Charles Atlas comic book ads. I don't know if you guys remember, but I picture it here. He used to have these ads where if you were a little skinny guy getting sand kicked in your face, you followed this model, this program, and you would be a new man. So it's reference to the old comic book ads and that whole philosophy. So I like that. Okay, so Meatloaf has been killed. And then Dr. Frankenfurt and Rocky go off and go have sex in this honeymoon suite style room, which is majestic in appearance. Of course, it has to be. And Susan Sarandon and Brad, I forget his name, they declothe them and put them in separate rooms. And this is where it gets kind of funny. I didn't know about this scene. Dr. Frankenfurt then goes into Janet's room, disguised or acting like Brad. Susan Sarandon is into it, then finds out, hey, you're not Brad. Stop what you're doing. Dr. Frankenfurt is persistent and she ends up sleeping with him. And the line that kind of got me upset a little bit, just promise you won't tell Brad. I'm like, what the hell? That's your fiance. I don't like cheating. All right. So when I saw that, I got a little upset. Like, no one should be cheating. But she said, don't promise you won't tell Brad. I'm like, oh my God, what a slut. And then the next thing that blows my mind is that they go to Brad's room. Okay. And Dr. Frankenfurt comes in acting like Susan Sarandon. They start kissing. He goes, wait a minute, you're not Janet. What are you doing? Get off me. And Tim Curry persists and just seduces him and ends up giving him a
Couldn't win.
And guess what? There's more sex. Susan Sarandon's walking around the castle. She sees a monitor where she sees Brad smoking a cigarette. After he slept with Dr. Frankenfurt. And then she ends up sleeping with Rocky. Which I'm kind of confused with the montage. There's a song Creature of the Night that's playing and she's singing along to it. And she starts sleeping with Rocky. But then there's a montage of Riff Raff, Magenta, all these other people like on top of her. I don't know if that was in her mind or if that was her actually sleeping with numerous people on that during that scene. So you tell me, I don't know, what are your thoughts? But shortly after that, Dr. Scott arrives to find out that he's looking for Eddie, who is Meatloaf, and that's his nephew. And they go on to a dinner scene, which is probably the funniest scene, in my opinion, of the entire film, because the tension between all the actors, everyone's had sex with each other practically. Well, Dr. Frankenfurt's had sex with everybody, but just the tension during the scene as he's cutting the ham just cracks me up. So while the dinner scene's taking place, Dr. Scott's explaining about Eddie's character and who he was. He was a bad kid. He had a switchblade knife under a teddy bear, I think is what he said. But then there's a reveal of Eddie's body, which is right directly beneath the table. And believe it or not, I didn't know this. Tim Curry, as he pulls that tablecloth off the table, nobody knew what was under the table and nobody knew he was going to do that. So everybody's reaction on that scene was 100% authentic. I didn't know that. The only ones who knew were Tim Curry and Meatloaf, since he had a model for the plastic molds to be made for the body. But that's pretty cool. So again, I bet you didn't know that. Everybody's reaction on that scene was authentic. And ladies and gentlemen, that takes us to the final act. So then we go into this elaborate stage play of, I guess, the finale of the show, which I do like the contrast. You have classic Hollywood there and then new Hollywood. So again, I love the visual contrast of this. So that's probably my favorite part of the, aside from the soundtrack, that's probably my favorite part of the entire film, just the set design. Everybody goes on a sequence and Tim Curry singing the song Don't Dream and Be It, which that whole sequence is from a cinematography standpoint, set design is beautiful. He jumps in the pool. They do a reverse shot where the fog kind of separates and you see him in a pool with the painting of God and man. So visually, the third act's amazing. It's pretty damn beautiful if you ask me. And believe it or not, during that scene where they're having the pool orgy, everyone's getting wet. Susan Sarandon, before the shoot actually started, she was saying the set was freezing. It was cold. So everybody in the pool is freezing. But Susan Sarandon actually got pneumonia after that shot. And for the duration of the filming, she had such a high fever she was shaking, and people from the set were saying that she should have been under medical attention, but she refused to leave the set because she wanted to complete filming. So bravo to Susan Sarandon for being an absolute trooper. But then we find out that they're aliens from a planet called Transsexual from the galaxy of Transylvania. Yeah, sorry. I can't say that with a straight face. So they're gonna head home. Riff Raff and Magenta say, hey, we gotta go. Tim Curry goes on this elaborate song saying goodbye. He's like, you spoke too soon. You're not going. You're staying here in spirit. So they kill Tim Curry. It upsets Rocky. Rocky carries Tim Curry up like some sort of like a symbolic King Kong sequence up the tower. Tower falls down, they're dead. So Rocky and Dr. Frankenfurt are dead now, and they warn the folks, you must leave, we're beaming up the castle. So they go and they leave the castle, and then the film ends. It makes no sense! No sense, but it doesn't! So that was my best attempt to explain the events that took place during the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I have to admit, it did kind of spark a creative fire that's kind of been dwindling in my mind. So again, visually, I love this film. The music's amazing, the performances are amazing, but again, my favorite piece is just the set design and the cinematography. It's just a beautiful film to watch, and I gotta hand it to the directors and everybody involved making this film. As far as the audience for this film, I know it's a cult classic, I know there's midnight showings, and it's kind of helped a lot of people come out and truly being who they are, and I admire that. If any film or any art, I really consider this film art. If any art can inspire you that way, I mean, that's a powerful statement. And what else can you say about a film? This film, you'll have audience, I believe, that either hate it, don't get it, or love it. And I'm in the love it piece, but again, from a visual standpoint, it's one of those films you have to really sit. And I posted on my Facebook page last night that, hey, I'm seeing it for the first time, and there were some comments, no, you have to go to a midnight screening. That's the true experience. And you know what? I'm glad I didn't do that. I've been involved with some Comic-Cons here in San Antonio where they try to reenact, or they have the play for the Rocky Horror Picture Show there, and I've witnessed them, but I've left because I didn't understand what's going on. If you've never been to a midnight screening, I would suggest watch the film 2 or 3 times first alone, so you understand the dialogue, what's being said during the songs, and really what the whole film's about. Once you have a great understanding, then go to the midnight screenings. I think you will have a far better experience, in my humble opinion. As far as my rating, I'm not going to give it a traditional rating, everybody. It's a classic. It's a cult classic. I enjoyed it. I understand why it's timeless, the power of the message of the film, and just the performances are timeless as well. So if you haven't seen the Rocky Horror Picture Show, I highly suggest you check it out. Be open-minded, have fun with it, and don't dream it, be it. And as always, thank you for watching Rudy's Movie Review, San Antonio's unofficial movie critic. Please take care. God bless and live long and prosper. And I'm out.